Hi.
Hi.
Am I on?
Thank you so much for coming. Thank you for coming to the Mike Trader Show. Stand on stage for Well, it's great to see you guys here. I saw this film at the premiere at South by, and the response was amazing. So obviously, I mean, it must be great to continue seeing it in theaters with audiences.
Nice, especially in theater like this. It's like
How many times has it played? I mean, like, it's touring?
just South by. No, South by, and then here we've been in the middle of negotiating a distribution deal, so we can talk about that. But
Yeah, I saw you told me on Twitter that you had some things to say.
I did. I have some things to say always.
We'll get to that shortly, but first I want to talk about the film a little bit. There's so much in this film that we don't know. So much about her past, so much about their powers, so much about like who the group is coming after them, and we kind of don't need to know any of it. Like, so much of the film is intuitive. As the two of you were writing the film and putting it together, how did you plan sort of what the audience needed to see? How did you pare it down to what we see here?
You know, it's interesting to ask. Like, you can always, you know, like the parceling out of information about what people need to know. You kind of take a stab at it at the script level, and you're like, okay, I think that's what it is, but inevitably that's incorrect. And you wind up doing a lot of reworking. I find post to be the place where you really start to find those answers. You know, you sort of parcel out the script. We tend to write a little bit more than we know. Like, now that we've made a couple of movies, we tend to write a little bit more and want to shoot a little bit more, so that we have stuff ultimately in the edit. You know, the filmmaking that we like to do is pretty formal and very intentional. Like, it's not let's just get some cameras and shoot and just kind of see what we find. It's very chosen, and so we like to put a lot on the page and then shoot a lot on the page so that ultimately the edit we compare back, but then ultimately we find we don't have stuff, but then you kind of recreate, kind of wind up using stuff from other places that you didn't expect to be in certain places. But honestly, the only way I have found to really know what an audience needs to know is to show the movie to people, the finished product to people, and listen to them, and not be scared of actually just like showing it to groups of people that you trust. You know, sometimes, especially when you're at the studio level, that gets kind of tied into like testing as a process, and that can be really complicated because people are looking for different things from tests. People expect tests to be like, well, if your number's this, then you got a home run. If your number's that, then we're going to bury your movie. And like, I don't look at tests that way. Tests are great because audiences actually tell you how they feel. You just have to kind of learn how to hear that side of the test. So we showed the movie to a lot of people and tried to listen to the things that made sense. But sort of only you know. And we were given a lot of runway by the people we were making the movie with to kind of really figure that out, because they were really supportive of Julie and the movie we were making. So.
I'd like to get into that a little more, but first, as we're talking about kind of what is on screen and what isn't on screen, what were the conversations about the character like? What like going in terms of what you would see and what you needed to feel? How did you and Julie talk about building a character?
Well, first of all, I'm so sad that Julia's not here. As Jordan said, she's 8.5 months pregnant. But when we, you know, when we first met and started talking about Ruth, and I mean, for me, when I first read the script, I was just so drawn into this woman who was sort of almost on the run from herself, I think, and I think, you know, the mystery around Ruth and her backstory was something we talked quite a lot about, and you know, for me, you know, Julia is so warm and receptive. She really wants to hear, you know, she really wants to feel what the actors want to bring to the character, and we talked about it a lot, but then it was really once we got to Albuquerque, which is where we shot in New Mexico, and working with Sanaya and Lorraine, you know, a lot of feminine energy there out in the desert. You know, it was really just a very collaborative process, and for me, I use a lot of music as well, and obviously there's music that Ruth listens to, from X-Ray Specs to Lauryn Hill, and like creating a sort of playlist for the character and bringing that element to it. We were just talking about it earlier, the idea of, certainly when you're on set, there's so many distractions going on, and for me, to have the music that Ruth is listening to is something that really helped me focus. But yeah, Julia was and Jordan, so collaborative. It was a really lovely creative process.
So much of that character is kind of bound up in her physicality, in the way she kind of hunches her shoulders when she's feeling put upon, and the way she kind of covers her face with her hands when she's sitting at the table. What were those conversations like in terms of how her body language changes throughout the film?
Yeah, I don't know if we really talked about body language so much. I mean, I remember in the script it being very specifically, the big man's black coat at the beginning, and then, it being sort of this androgynous character that, you weren't sure, it's so dark and murky, and she's sort of, in this sort of such desperate circumstances that it's only at a certain point that you realise there's actually a woman underneath this kind of almost very mysterious, sort of tough exterior. And I don't know, I think that was something I just sort of discovered working with Elizabeth Warren, our costume designer. We were finding the boots that these army boots that were so heavy, but I just felt so grounded wearing them, and finding elements of the costume. I mean, she was so amazing at finding vintage pieces and things that felt really worn in, and the idea of the world being somewhere where there was, this drought and this lack, and that, everything had a sort of hand-me-down, worn-in sort of feel. And so I guess, a lot of the physicality came from that. And also, the fact that, Ruth wasn't really, at the beginning of the movie, comfortable in herself and in her power. And I think a lot of that sort of more contracted physicality, and then towards the end, opening up and becoming, opening up to her potential, sort of, this physical.
So we talked a lot about at the script stage needing a very physical actress for the role. I mean, when we were writing, we saw Beyond the Lights, and that's what made us. If you haven't seen Beyond the Lights, it's terrific.
Absolutely.
It's another movie that Gugu was in. So we saw that. That was the first thing we saw. We were like, this is the person we want for this movie. And we talked a lot about the physicality, because really the first act doesn't have a ton of dialogue. And then once they kind of get to the farmhouse, there's a lot. She starts to open up a little bit. But as she said, she was very contracted, physical, and needing an actress that was able to kind of hold that physicality on screen. We talked a little bit about, Ripley from Ant-Man. That was definitely a model, certainly for that first act, that coat, that sort of like very physical presence that you just kind of felt on screen, just kind of came off of it. So.
Yeah, I've read interviews with you where you talk about how this sort of started off as a story about a woman with power, and then once you realized that this was who you wanted for the role, it became a story about a woman of color with power and sort of that relationship to society. Did that change the script at all, or did you just sort of want to change the script?
It changed the script in that when we cast Gugu and then Lorraine and Sanaya, because as I said, when we were writing the script, it was very much Julia's first the first time she came to me and said, "This is a movie I want to make," was after we had our first kid, and she said, "I feel more powerful than I've ever felt before, as a mother, and why have I never seen a superhero movie that's specifically about and about motherhood and mothers and daughters?" And I said, "I don't know. That's a great question. We should figure that out." And so she started writing it, and it was at first about female power, the power of mothers. And then we saw Beyond the Lights. We're like, okay, we want Gugu, and we wrote the script and we sent it to her, and we read it in a night. Like literally the next day. It was funny. We had just changed agencies, and we sent it to Gugu, and we were going to meet with our agent, and an assistant was like, "Oh, Gugu really liked the script." It was like literally.
Yeah, I read it straight away. It was so compelling.
And we were like in the elevator with an assistant going up to our agent's office. She was like, "Oh, we heard Gugu loved the script." We were like, "Wait, what?" He said literally 8 hours ago. So.
I know, I'm a nerd. Yeah, I'm a nerd.
So that was rad. We're like, whoa. And then from that moment forward, we're like, okay, and her mother is now going to be a woman of color, and her daughter's a woman of color as well. And so once we started to wrap our heads around that, and cast Lorraine and Sanaya, it was just about sort of being open and listening to them, and wanting to find sort of what the authentic experience would be of these women in this world. And all of you, Sanaya, Lorraine, and Gugu, had sort of instincts about what that would mean. The journal is one thing that I think really became a lot more present in the film. Lorraine was really, she had a lot of passion for the journal, and this idea of telling her story, and writing her story generation after generation. It was definitely in the script, but I think it became a lot more present in the script as we developed it. That was definitely one aspect that I know got really pulled out by just kind of having conversation with actors. And then Julie really likes to rehearse, really likes to hear the script and just change it as we go. Really kind of find, it's a great collaborative process because we start from a place of collaboration because we write together. So we try to have a singular voice, but it's two of us. So we start from this place of collaboration and a place of family because we're married. So inevitably that tends to be the way that we kind of that's how we present on set, so that we like for everybody to kind of participate in that same process. So yeah, it was about listening and then letting the story be bigger than